People always think the strongest move is to explain yourself, to send that long message, to clear the air, to make sure he understands how you feel. Let me tell you something real. The most savage way to ignore a man is not by pretending you don't care. It's by actually choosing yourself so completely that his reactions no longer control you. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the situation. And when you stop feeding it, that's when it starts starving. Ignoring him is not silence, it is self-respect in motion. That's the part most people never understand. They think ignoring means being cold, playing games, or pretending you don't care when deep down you do. That's not what this is. Real ignoring happens when you finally decide that your peace matters more than proving a point. It's when you stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally, and sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. When you operate from self-respect, your silence carries weight. It's not empty, it's not confused, it's not weak, it's filled with clarity. You're no longer trying to be understood by someone who isn't trying to listen. You're no longer explaining your value to someone who should already see it. That shift alone changes everything. Because once you respect yourself, you stop tolerating mixed signals, half-effort, and inconsistent behavior. Silence driven by self-respect feels different. It's calm. It's steady. There's no anxiety behind it. You're not watching your phone every minute. You're not hoping he'll notice. You're simply moving forward. And that forward motion sends a message louder than any argument ever could. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need validation from someone who can't meet me where I stand. Here's the truth most people don't like hearing. The moment you stop chasing clarity from someone who enjoys confusing you, you take your power back. Chasing explanations keeps you emotionally trapped. Ignoring from a place of self-respect frees you, because now your energy is no longer leaking into something that isn't growing. It's being reinvested into yourself, your life, your purpose. Self-respect means you don't reward neglect with attention. You don't reward silence with paragraphs. You don't reward inconsistency with loyalty. When you stop doing that, the dynamic shifts. He feels it immediately, not because you announced it, but because access has changed. The energy he once took for granted is no longer available on demand. And this is where it gets uncomfortable for him, because people don't miss you when you're always there. They miss you when they feel the absence of what they used to have easy access to. Your self-respect creates distance without bitterness. It creates boundaries without arguments. It creates space where reflection is forced. Ignoring him from self-respect also means you don't explain why you're doing it. You don't justify your silence. You don't send a closing statement. You let your actions speak. When someone truly values you, they don't need a breakdown of your boundaries. They feel them. This kind of ignoring isn't loud, and that's why it's so effective. It doesn't seek revenge, it seeks alignment. You're no longer bending yourself to keep someone comfortable at your expense. You're standing still in who you are and letting anyone who can't handle that fall away naturally. That's why ignoring him this way hits so hard. Because it's not about him anymore. It's about you choosing dignity over desperation, peace over pressure, and self-respect over temporary attention. And once you make that choice, everything changes. Attention is currency, and once you understand that, you stop giving it away to people who haven't earned it. Every text you send, every call you answer, every time you rush to respond, you're spending something valuable. Most people don't realize they're paying full price for someone who's barely investing anything back. When you remove your attention, you don't become invisible, you become valuable. Scarcity changes perception, and perception changes behavior. See, attention feeds ego. When someone knows they can reach you anytime, get a reaction anytime, pull emotion from you anytime, they relax. They stop trying. They stop showing up with intention, not because they're evil, but because human nature gets lazy when access is unlimited. When you pull that access back, it creates a gap, and that gap forces awareness. The moment you stop responding instantly, stop checking in, stop explaining yourself, something shifts. He starts noticing the silence not because it's loud, but because it's unfamiliar. His mind fills in the blanks. Questions start forming. Where did that energy go? Why isn't she reacting the same way? Why does this feel different? And that curiosity is powerful because curiosity leads to pursuit. What most people do wrong is they keep spending attention hoping it will buy commitment. But attention doesn't buy commitment. It buys comfort. And comfort without effort kills desire. When you stop pouring your attention into someone who's unsure, you take away the comfort and leave only the truth. Either he steps up to regain access, or he fades away because he never valued it to begin with. Removing attention isn't about punishment, it's about honesty. You're no longer pretending you're okay with less than you deserve. You're no longer entertaining inconsistency just to avoid loneliness. You're saying without words that your energy is precious and not everyone qualifies for it. And here's the part that really changes the dynamic. When you stop giving attention outward, you start giving it inward. You focus on your growth, your routine, your goals, your peace. That self-focus changes your presence. You walk differently. You speak differently. You don't need approval because you're no longer seeking it. That inner shift is felt, even from a distance. He doesn't miss the conversations as much as he misses how he felt being the center of your attention. When that spotlight turns off, it exposes the reality. Was there substance, or was it just convenience? Attention withdrawal brings clarity faster than any confrontation ever could. People always reveal their true intentions when access changes. Some will try harder. Some will test boundaries. Some will disappear. None of that is your problem anymore. Because once you understand attention is currency, you stop negotiating your worth with it. You invest it where it grows, not where it drains you. Consistency will always beat confrontation because confrontation gives emotion a stage and consistency quietly rewrites the rules. Most people think the way to be heard is to argue, to explain, to raise their voice until someone finally understands their pain. But confrontation keeps you tied to the very behavior you're trying to change. It keeps you reacting instead of leading. Consistency, on the other hand, removes emotion from the equation and replaces it with certainty. When you confront someone over and over, you teach them that no matter what they do, you'll still show up to discuss it. You'll still explain. You'll still care enough to fight. That doesn't create respect, it creates predictability. And predictability makes people comfortable ignoring your boundaries. They already know the outcome. You'll get upset, you'll talk, you'll forgive, and the cycle repeats. Consistency breaks that cycle without a single argument. When your actions match your standards every time, people have no room to negotiate with you. If you say you don't accept disrespect, and then you consistently remove yourself when it appears, your message becomes clear. There's no confusion, there's no drama, there's no emotional debate. Just cause and effect. Power of consistency is that it doesn't rely on mood. You don't have to be angry. You don't have to be hurt. You don't have to prove a point. You simply do the same thing every time your boundary is crossed. And that repetition conditions behavior far more effectively than confrontation ever will. People may argue with your words, they can't argue with your absence. Confrontation gives temporary relief. You say what you needed to say, you feel heard for a moment, and then nothing changes. Consistency creates long-term change because it forces accountability. When someone sees that access to you depends on how they treat you, they start paying attention. Not because you demanded it, because your actions demanded respect. Here's what makes consistency so uncomfortable for him. There's nothing to push against. No emotional reaction to twist, no words to manipulate, no fight to win. Just a steady pattern that doesn't bend. And when someone can't move you with charm, silence, or excuses, they start questioning their control. Consistency also protects your peace. You're not draining yourself explaining the same feelings to someone who already knows. You're not reopening wounds just to prove they exist. You're not rehearsing speeches in your head. You're simply living in alignment with what you deserve. That alignment builds confidence, and confidence is felt even when nothing is said. The moment he realizes that every time he shows up correctly, he gets access, and every time he doesn't, he loses it, the power dynamic shifts. Now the focus is no longer on what you're saying, it's on what you're doing. And behavior always responds faster to patterns than to pressure. That's why consistency is savage without being cruel. It's calm, it's disciplined, it's unshakable. And once someone understands that you don't argue your boundaries, you live them, everything about how they approach you changes. Emotional control shifts power without saying a word, and that is something most people never master. The moment you lose emotional control, you hand the situation over to the other person. Your reactions become predictable, your triggers become visible, and your peace becomes negotiable. When you stay calm, grounded, and unmoved, you quietly take control of the entire dynamic. People expect reactions. They expect anger, sadness, explanations, or emotional outbursts. Those reactions give them information. They learn what affects you, how to push you, and how to pull you back in. Emotional control removes that map. When you don't react the way they expect, they feel it immediately. The uncertainty unsettles them more than any argument ever could. Controlling your emotions doesn't mean suppressing them or pretending you don't feel anything. It means choosing when, where, and with whom you express them. You stop giving raw access to your inner world to someone who hasn't earned that level of trust. That restraint creates mystery, and mystery creates respect. When you don't respond emotionally, the situation loses its fuel. Drama needs reaction to survive. Conflict needs engagement to grow. Without your emotional participation, the tension collapses on itself. And when that happens, the other person is forced to sit with their own thoughts, their own behavior, and their own consequences. This is where power truly shifts, not through control of another person, but through control of yourself. You become unmovable. You're no longer being pulled into emotional chaos. You're no longer reacting from hurt or fear. You're responding from clarity. That calm presence communicates strength louder than raised voices ever could. Emotional control also protects your dignity. You don't say things you regret. You don't beg, you don't threaten, you don't over-explain. You leave situations cleanly without emotional mess. And that clean exit stays in someone's mind far longer than a dramatic one. They replay your calm. They question why you didn't react. They wonder what changed. The absence of emotional reaction forces accountability. Without your emotions to deflect onto, he has nothing to blame but himself. No argument to hide behind, no fight to distract from his behavior. Just silence and self-reflection. And that reflection is uncomfortable because it removes the illusion of control. When you master emotional control, you stop needing validation. You stop needing closure from someone else. You stop needing to be understood by someone who isn't listening. That inner stability changes how you move, how you speak, how you show up. And people feel that shift instantly. Emotional control is not weakness. It is discipline. It is strength under pressure. It is choosing peace over chaos. And when you move with that level of control, you don't have to demand respect. It naturally follows. Absence forces reflection in a way arguments never can, because arguments keep people defensive, but absence leaves them alone with their thoughts. When you argue, you give someone something to push back against. They focus on winning, justifying, or proving their point. When you step back and remove yourself, there is nothing left to